Tactar Ted video number 2 for Wednesday, the 21st of September. Today we're going to talk about referendums. Yes, referendums. What is a referendum? Well, it's like a vote. Easiest way I could explain to my son is that the elections for president are basically a referendum on who you want to lead the country. And there's a lot of talk about the referendums that were surprise announced this week about the regions of Lugansk, Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporozhye having referendums on joining the Russian Federation. Now, let's talk a little bit about referendums. Referendums are nothing new. I can remember referendums in Canada to see whether Quebec was going to remain part of Canada. Referendums about Scotland leaving Britain. I guess probably the biggest referendum of the last dozen or so years was the referendum for Britain to exit the EU, aka Brexit, which that referendum passed. And I don't see anybody doing what the West is currently doing. La, 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 la. That's what the West is doing. I can't hear you. The referendums in Donbass are going to be illegitimate. We're not going to recognize them. Well, perhaps maybe the EU shouldn't have recognized Britain's referendum. I mean, come on, guys. Let's be an adult. Britain says they're leaving the EU. They leave the EU. Scotland has had referendums on leaving Great Britain. I believe since Brexit, there's been a renewed push to have another referendum because Scotland would like to be back in the EU, or at least a small minority of people think that. Maybe it's a majority. I don't know. They got to have that referendum to decide. Referendums are interesting because we see this as a democratic process. The people have a right to self-determination. They have a right to decide whether they're going to leave. But folks just don't want to fucking listen if it doesn't suit their point. You know, I'm sure that the King of England didn't like the fact that 13 colonies in the New World decided to say, hey, dude, we're done. We've had it. We're leaving. Goodbye. I'm sure he didn't appreciate that. And I'm sure that Ukraine is going to be a little offended that their citizenry that they've been bombing and killing and shelling since 2014 are not going to be happy about those guys leaving. But for the West collectively to say that we cherish democracy, that we cherish the right to vote and people's rights, and then we turn around and shit all over people who are declaring that they want to separate themselves from one country and join another, or just to separate, then that's kind of hypocritical. You know, I gave the example yesterday of Kosovo and basically how Yugoslavia in the post-Soviet bloc world was basically dismembered by NATO. And the dismemberment wasn't enough. We had to break Serbia up a little more by taking Kosovo away. Now, was it right? Was it wrong? I don't know. I will tell you this much. I support Kosovo's right to be independent. But I also support Serbia's right to not have outside interference in issues that don't affect the security of other states. And this is where it's kind of conflicted, because I support the people's right of Kosovo to leave, but there was no referendum when we decided to start bombing Belgrade. The referendums for Lugansk and Donetsk to become independent are not new. They're from 2014. In 2014, they declared their independence. In 2022, there's a good possibility that they are going to declare their intention that they wish to join the Russian Federation. So, we've already denied one referendum, that those people don't have a right to decide what they want to do. Yet we're going to support Kosovo, our independence. The West, we decided that. We recognized Kosovo as being independent, and then we just raised all sorts of hell. And that's fine, we did that. But when Russia wants to do that, it's not a good thing. We can't allow it. Once again, hypocrisy, guys. Hypocrisy. And it's not like we didn't have a chance to sit down at the negotiating table. Minsk 1, Minsk 2, the Ukrainians signed it and had no intention of fulfilling it. They were looking for time. Very much the same way that they say they're not going to use NATO and U.S. weapons against civilian targets, yet they do. That they definitely, if we get, but don't worry about it. We didn't follow Minsk 1, we didn't follow Minsk 2, and yeah, we've kind of used some of what you give to kill civilians as retaliatory strikes against the civilian populace for supporting the Russians. But dude, we're super serious. We're super serious. If you give us those 300-kilometer missiles, dude, we're absolutely not going to use them to do things you don't want us to do. So just go ahead and give them, trust us. Dude, seriously, you're going to trust the Ukrainians. Oh my Lord. And I don't blame a lot of you folks for being out of the loop on what's going on. A lot of you folks don't pay attention to what's going on at home, much less what's going on overseas. Unfortunately, I have. And it's really interesting to find a lot of the folks that I have worked with in various places also are going on about the hypocrisy. And folks I didn't think, people I've reached out to, I've worked with elsewhere. Hey dude, yeah, you're saying it like it is. This is hypocrisy. But to see the West want to lecture Russia on how no one will recognize the validity of referendums. Something's either valid or it's not. And validity cannot simply be dismissed because of a plurality of who agrees with it. We have an equal rights amendment in this country for women. Let's say a plurality of the people in this country said, nah, don't agree with it. Don't agree with it. Don't agree with it. Don't recognize it. Does it make it not valid? We have a Civil Rights Act in this country. And there were a great number, many people who did not agree with it when it was passed. Does that make it invalid? Does it? So don't go lecturing people about validity when you simply do as you please and then you justify it in the end. Because that's what we're doing, folks. And we take news, we spin it. We take news, we take facts, we take it part and parcel, and then we build a story around it. Because the best lies always have a kernel of truth in it. So you can say, well, this is true, so this, and you weave this big web around it, trying to turn it into something that's not. And that's what these folks are doing with the referendum. They don't care what people want. They're governments. They only care what they want. And when they tell you that the people can vote one way and they don't give a shit, then really, are you a champion of democracy? Are you a champion of all these things that you claim to hold dear? Sounds to me like you're not. Sounds to me like you're full of your own shit. Sounds to me like you're full of your own shit. So anyhow, folks, you take care, and I'll talk to you later with more interesting nonsense from my demented brain.